What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? Well, it's crossover time with Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes to discuss who are the players to watch out for this upcoming season from both the Dbacks and the Padres, and taking a look at some more intriguing players from around the National League on today's episode.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And on today's show to discuss the most intriguing, the players who have the biggest breakout potential from both the D-backs and Padres this upcoming season. Of course, we have to talk to Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes. So let's bring him on the show. Boop, boop, boop.
What is up, man? As always, a pleasure, a delight, an honor to be here doing a crossover with you, Locked On D-backs fans. Love to hear from you guys as well. Man, what a time. What a time, dude. We're in that, like, not dog days of off season, but dog days of pre-season where you're just like, man, like, we're right there, man. It's like when you're in like spring, I mean, it's, preseason football, preseason basketball, all that, where you're like, let's get it rolling, man. Let's get it going. But excited to talk with you because there's still plenty to discuss for sure, despite the fact that I feel like free agency's done, right? I know Jose Quintana signed with the Brewers the other day, but for the most part, like, we're kind of locked and loaded.
Yeah, and the thing with MLB spring training too, like when preseason starts, you're like, okay, the season's about to start, we're right around the corner. But when spring training starts, you're like, dang, we're still like 8 weeks away from the MLB season. Like we're still 2 months away and we're playing baseball games. It's crazy. So yes, we are like right there, but somehow I've been watching baseball for weeks and we're still weeks away from real baseball. So like I am ready for the actual season to start. But of course, there's spring training. There's still a bunch of fun storylines. Get to see the players you signed from free agency or acquired through trade. You get to see those young players who might have broke out for you in the minor leagues last season that are now trying to make the roster. Like right now, Javi, what's like the biggest thing you're watching out like in spring training for your Padres? Is there like a fun storyline, a fun player? Like what are you watching right now?
Yeah, like in terms of just the biggest storyline for the Padres, it is easily who gets the fifth start job. Hold on, the fifth spot in the starting rotation. There's a bunch of different candidates, but Matt Waldron, Stephen Kolek probably being the two front runners, and then Kyle Hart, who we haven't quite seen enough of yet. He's another one in the mix. Brian Hoeing was in the mix, but he just got injured, so that's probably not happening. And Randy Vasquez is another. So it's going to be interesting just seeing who fills up that fifth spot. And what's great is that it's no longer who fills up two spots, right? Because when the Nick Pivetta, before the Nick Pivetta signing, there was real, like, all of a sudden, I just feel like this Padres team, it just feels like a little bit of juice and enthusiasm got added because I really like Nick Pivetta. I think you and I probably talked about him like early on.
I feel like we talked about him so much on our podcast. It was like the guy with the advanced stats is supposed to break out, but we're still waiting for it. But now it's funny that he's actually on the Padres because
Exactly. We probably said, we were like, you know what? D-backs, Padres, like, they probably aren't going to be going for free agents that are like big fish. So Nick Pivetta could be a really awesome one to have as your number 3 or 4. And the D-backs were like, oh, that's interesting. How about this? And then it's like Corbin Burns in like the middle of the night on Friday.
Yeah, it was like, we'll raise you a Nick Pivetta with a Corbin Burns. And like, that's probably like been probably the most interesting thing to watch so far for the D-backs this spring training, because of course, like you said, we have our own like battle to fill out the rest of the rotation, because when you have Burns, Gallen, Kelly, Fott, Monty, Erod, and then your best starter from last season was Ryan Nelson, that's 7 starters, and the D-backs keep saying they're going with a 5-man rotation. So it's like, how is that going to be divvied up? So like, that's a great battle to watch. But so far in spring training, we've already seen Corbin Burns make 3 starts for the D-backs. So it's like so electric to see this guy that chose to come to Arizona, picked up the phone call and said, Ken Kendrick, I want to sign with you guys. To see him come in already, hit like 97 on his cutter, like just amping up D-backs fans for the start of the season. So that's probably been the biggest thing from like Arizona side that we've been really watching out for. But there was some like little news, Javi, that we saw through spring training with one of your players from the Padres. Want to poke the bear a little bit because we saw Fernando Tatis Jr., the star of the San Diego Padres, signed with Bad Bunny's agency, and it seems like his agency is like blacklisted right now by like the MLB Players Association. It seems like they're not on like good footing. Like, is this a power move by Fernando Tatis to? Is he trying to get more money? Is he saying, hey, I know Padres, you guys been spending money on a lot of other players, but we're not exactly winning. If we don't get together around here, I'm gonna have to ask out. Like, what's going on? Why is he doing this, Javi?
So the prior agency seems to have like some weird stuff going on with it. Just from SI, like they're like the MLBPA rescinded the agent certification of William Arroyo, Remus's lead agent, and denied certification to company executives Assad and Miranda. This followed an investigation by the union that revealed the agency had provided a $200,000 interest-free loan and a $19,500 gift in an attempt to bribe players to sign with Remus. So, like, I don't know what's going on here. It could get a little bit weird. I think overall, though, with this deal, it is a little sus. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Like if you're at Tatis's stature, if you're one of these guys, you're not just randomly messing things up by signing with a bad agency, right? It's the agency's co-owned by a fellow Puerto Rican, Bad Buddy. So that's kind of, this could be an effort to like bring the juice back to Tatis, right? Because while he is still up there, he basically had a year and a half of playing where he wasn't the most famous player in the sport for a little bit, in my opinion. And it picked up again once he had the playoff surge, right? Deservedly so. He had like an absolutely horrid stretch in the playoffs against the Dodgers and the Braves. Everybody saw it. And he was, getting that allure back. But he hasn't had that like same draw, face of the game, I still remember those MLB The Show commercials, like, sorry if I made things a little too exciting, all that sort of stuff. Like, he was the guy. And I'm wondering if like maybe with Bad Bunny and company, like, is this just a little bit of a sign that they're trying to change their marketing strategy a little bit? Probably. But it doesn't mean anything, I imagine, for like his future with the Padres. He's already under contract. There's nothing, unless this MLB randomly turns into the NBA, where all of a sudden players have and they're just like, I demand to be traded, and specifically only to a contender, then I doubt it makes a big deal. But hey, maybe it means we're going to see some fun Tatis content in the future. Something, get his name a little bit more out there.
And honestly, if you had to pick a player who is like under contract that you would feel like could do the NBA route, demand out of his current situation, Tatis would probably be on the short list of guys with his fiery personality who would be like, let me go to a big market who's already a contender. Like, I would see Tatis. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but he would be the type of player where I could see do that. But like you said, he's locked up for until like 2035. If this was like a contract year where he like signed with Scott Boras or something, that would be like, okay, Tatis is loaded up for a $400 million contract this offseason, but he's already locked up. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. His buddy Machado's locked up. Bogarts is locked up. Like, we know what the core of the Padres is, and this has been a team that's been committed to winning. So unless it gets really tumultuous over the next couple seasons where the Padres find themselves in the gutter, like they just had themselves a very good year where, Tatis comes back, maybe he's a little bit better next season. Maybe a guy like Machado, who also is kind of down. And of course, if Bogarts, like if some of your core players in the lineup have better seasons in 2025, yes, you didn't do a lot this past free agency, but sometimes all you need is like the internal development to be better. So I would still look out for the Padres as a team to contend with entering next season. And some players from both of our teams, we both have a little list of guys that we think are intriguing, guys with potential breakout talent entering 2025. So Javi and I will discuss those players coming up in segment number 2. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. My favorite Wonderful Pistachios I actually have right here. Sorry to the audio listeners only. You're going to have to go to YouTube for this one because right next to me, I got 3 of my favorite flavors here. And this is what is great about Wonderful Pistachios. Unsalted right here, no shell. Chili roasted, no shell. And then this one is roasted and salted with the shell. The great thing about Wonderful Pistachios is the variety. You could get salted, unsalted, with shell, no shell, get a little kick to it if you wanted to. No matter what flavor you want, they have a variety and a profile that fits just for you. So please go get yourself some wonderful pistachios, get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On Padres crossover. And now, Javi, we got a list of some players. I don't know if these are like everyday starters for you, guys more on the cusp of the roster, but we got some guys from both of our teams that we think are intriguing players to watch entering this upcoming season. And I'm such a gracious guy, Javi. I will let you go first and start us off with who you think is a player to watch from the San Diego Padres. I don't know why you think that's so funny. I'm a gracious guy.
I don't know. It's just like there's something about you. I think I know Millard a little bit too much, and the way he acts, like just, hey, everybody, who's ready for fantasy baseball this year? Who's ready to have a fun time? And I'm like, nah, this guy, the smile hides the demon that lurks behind those eyes, man. In terms of the Padres, though, guys to keep an eye on, obviously, we have the stars, but outside of that, I think for the Padres, it's we mentioned in the first segment that the Padres' big storyline is who is going to get that fifth spot. But for me, I think it's Tirso Ornelas, who's the 15th ranked prospect for the Padres heading into this year. He's been a guy that's been kind of on the outside looking in for a while. And I think part of that was because of just certain lineup decisions they've had, even the year that they had like Brandon Drury on this team, and especially last year with Jurickson Profar, that like they just haven't had a spot for him, right? Like there just hasn't been an opportunity for him. He's 25 years old, and he's been turning a lot of heads so far at spring training. Hitting, I believe, 467 so far in 18 plate appearances. Obviously, that's not the be-all and end-all, but no strikeouts. That's a big deal. He is just a guy that puts the ball in play, and I think that the key here is Connor Joe and Jason Hayward. I talked about this recently on my show. I could see a world in which Connor Joe is just like waived pretty soon if Tirso Ornelas does what potentially he could do, which is just be this average player, right? An average player who's going to put the ball in play, maybe get a decent amount of walks every now and then, and not going to hit for basically any power, just be a decent player. And then you couple that with Jason Hayward, that could make for actually low-key like a pretty good outfield. I don't know if it's as good as your team's outfield, but nonetheless, it would at least give you like a higher floor, I think. So Tirso Ornelas is the one to keep an eye on, see if he makes the team, because given the fact that they invested so much, not invested so much, as to say, given the fact that they added like these moves that look a little bit desperate, moves that are like, okay, we don't have a lot of money to spend right now, so we're just going to pick up some guys to be able to fill out the roster in Joe and Hayward. I think Tirso's the guy. I don't know too much about him in terms of his overall like skills, how they will translate at the major league level. But at 25 years old, I'm always going to side with, especially it's as long as you don't have, in the case of Profar, a literal starting outfielder in the all-star game caliber player there, I'm always going to be like, let's try the guy that we haven't seen before. Let's just see what happens. Try it out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and maybe luck into something. Right? That happens every now and then. Jake Cronenworth was not on anyone's radar heading into that 2020 season. Jorge Mateo, he's out with COVID, I believe it was. Then they bring up Jake Cronenworth, and then the rest is history, right? He ends up becoming, well, not necessarily an all-star. He's been flirting with it, right? He's going to be back at second this year, but he has been certainly an MLB player. And when you can get an MLB starter that wasn't even like in your top 10 prospects of your team before the season, that's a big deal. And it does account for something and matter in the end.
No, yeah. He's as good as you're saying. He could come in and be like an immediate impact guy, like on the level of like how Jake McCarthy was as a rookie for the D-backs, where he wasn't like a highly touted prospect. But then you look up at the end of the season, you're like, man, this guy was like a dude for us all season. And if he ends up being that for the Padres, like, yeah, your outfield is probably as good, if not better than the D-backs at that point. Because I look at Tatis versus Corbin Carroll, you could say that's a wash. And then Jackson Merrill, I mean, he was getting love as like an MVP guy down the stretch of the season last year. So if he takes like a year or two leap, like he's probably better than Lourdes Gurriel on my team, probably better than Jake or Randall Grichuk. So like you have a real argument in your outfield if this prospect that you're talking about can come in and be as good immediately as we think he potentially can be. So very intriguing guy for the Padres if he could come in and be immediately good. I'll go out and I'll give another deeper cut, I guess, for the D-backs. It's on the same level. If you're a D-backs guy, you know who he is. But for the Padres, you might not remember him because he missed all of last season with injury. But Dre Jameson is back in D-backs camp, and he's a potential back-end reliever, a high-velocity arm. This is a guy that can throw hard. We know the D-backs last year added Justin Martinez as their closer, a guy that could throw 100, added AJ Puck, a guy that could throw 98, 99. Kevin Ginkel could throw 97. Now you add Dre Jameson potentially if he wins a job in this bullpen. He was a guy who was pretty good his first couple seasons, not a large sample size, and missed all of last season due to injury. But so far in spring training, he's back. He's fully healthy. He's been hitting 100 miles per hour on that fastball sinker he has. He can throw super, super hard. And if you have him in the mix with all those other high velocity relievers the D-backs currently have, like, this is a new look bullpen for the D-backs. When I took over this podcast a few years ago, we had nobody could throw hard. We had Joaquin Soria, we had Tyler Clippard, we had Hector Rondon. Like, we were topping out at like 90 miles per hour. Now we enter the next season with like 4 or 5 dudes that could throw between like 97 and like 103 miles per hour. It's going to be a flame throwing pin if Dre Jameson wins one of these jobs. So I'm putting him on the radar for the San Diego Padres. Javi, give me another guy.
Oh man, with the Padres, I'd say for the Padres, oh man, I think that it is. Oh no. I was gonna say, like, it's probably. I guess you've got to just give some hype to my boy. I always got to talk about Yuki Matsui whenever I have the opportunity. I talked about in bold predictions for my episode. I think Yuki Matsui is going to end up being, or at least it's my bold prediction. I don't know if this is a certain, whatever that means, right? Yuki Matsui will end up being the best reliever on this Padres team was one of my bold predictions. He's looked really sharp in spring training. He's throwing a lot of strikes. Control has been his issue, and specifically throwing high in the zone because players have teed off when he misses that fastball location. As long as he does that, I can see him having like that sub-3 ERA season, because I think that while he is a little bit prone to giving up home runs at the wrong time, he was so bad in high leverage situations that if you're so drastically great, right, in one direction or the other, absent you being a beast, like an established player for years, your Josh Haders, your Mariano Rivera's, your heck, even Addison Reed for a period. Shout out former D-back, right? Like, had a really great stretch. But in general, my thing is, if you're one direction or the other, I expect a little bit of regression. I think he'll be better in those spots when they use it properly. And his stuff, all of his off-speed stuff, was not like they just couldn't touch it last year. So I'm really keeping an eye on Yuki Matsui, despite the fact that some people aren't as bullish on this bullpen as others. I am bullish on this bullpen. I think that it can be good, while not the same, I think, upside as the D-backs because of the pure stuff, the velocity, like you were just talking about. I think that Yuki Matsui can be quite good. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, if the Padres were to maybe trade Robert Suarez. I don't think that'll happen before opening day, but if it were to happen, I wouldn't be shocked. Jeremiah Stroud is great, but some of the advanced projections actually think that he might take a step back too. So I'm keeping an eye on him.
Yeah, Yuki is a fun one because he was a guy that came in that was pretty interesting last season. That had a decent year with the Padres. I'm just looking at the numbers on Baseball Reference, like a 27% strikeout rate, still a 370 ERA. But like you said, a little bit of command issues with that walk rate. So if he gets that together, like, his numbers look fine. Obviously, he's not a flamethrower, like you said, averaging around 92 miles per hour. But as long as you have stuff that could work off of that, that's pretty nasty. Like, that's all that really matters. So he is someone that I was intrigued by last season that ended up having a pretty decent year as a rookie. So he is someone that is on my radar. And I am a big Robert Suarez guy. So if he is going to be on the market potentially come the deadline, like, that's someone that I would like the D-backs to poke around depending on how expensive his price tag is. And then I'll just give one more player before we go around and talk about some dudes from the National League and the division that we're intrigued by for next season. But Jock Peterson is gone. D-backs need to fill that lefty void. Currently, Pavin Smith is slotted to fill in that role, but he's not the guy I want to talk about, because if Pavin Smith struggles, the backup to Pavin Smith, Adrian Del Castillo, who is battling for actually the backup catcher role, he is a monster offensive player. His issue is he's not a good defensive player. So he is the perfect kind of DH lefty bat. If Pavin Smith struggles, he could go in, be that lefty DH for the D-backs. Small sample size last season, but when he did play for Arizona, at least offensively, he crushed in the small sample size he had. .313 average, .893 OPS in 80 at-bats. He had 4 home runs, and he crushed on the minor league level as well. And so if he ends up being like the go-to just lefty DH for the D-backs, I think at least offensively, he could be a real impact. With Jock Peterson's gone, there's at least opportunity for someone to step up in that role entering 2025. Now we'll discuss some intriguing players that we have from around the National League and the NL West in segment number 3. And if you're looking to buy tickets to an upcoming sport or an event, then the best place to do that, of course, is going to be Gametime, because Gametime is the best place for last-minute deals on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have this feature called all-in pricing. When you toggle this feature on, it shows you your total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You could get a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks, so Locked On Padres crossover. Now we'll go around the NL West and discuss some players that we are intrigued by entering this season. I will start with one from the NL West, from the San Francisco Giants, because he's a former D-back who was missing a lot of time due to injury, who debuted at the end of last season for the Giants. And if you go look at his game log, really had one blow-up start against the Braves where he gave up like 5 earned runs in like 2/3 of an inning. But every other start, he was actually very good. The strikeout numbers were insane, as they always are. I'm talking about former Cy Young Award winner Robbie Ray of the SF Giants. If he ends up pitching a full season and what we saw at the end of last season, if that ends up being true, if he's really back to the guy that we saw back in Toronto, not with Arizona, unless it's like 2017 Robbie Ray, but not the way he ended his career with the D-backs, the way he started it with Toronto and the way he pitched in Seattle even at times. If that guy's back for the Giants with a Logan Webb, with the little Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, I think the Giants could really be frisky. This is actually the first year I'm like kind of optimistic about the Giants entering a season. The last 2 years, I kind of wrote off their off seasons, but I kind of like their team on paper. I don't think they're a World Series contender, but a team that could fight for a wild card spot. I'm kind of in on the Giants this year.
The Giants could be interesting, right? And Robbie Ray is absolutely one of those guys that, like, as long as you're not viewing him in the respect of, oh, Cy Young guy, then I think that he could provide value. I think that this stuff matters. I even was tempted to talk about the D-backs with Jordan Montgomery, where I'm like, now it seems like the reports with him are like really weird and bad, but I still think it matters that, like, guys, this was a dude who didn't have an ERA above like 3.3 for like, or whatever it was, like 3.5 for like 4 seasons. I don't just think he's a 9 ERA guy now. Like, I think that there's value there. I don't know what the value is. I don't even know if it's a bullpen piece, right? But I still think that he could be just better than what he was, right? He's a buy low guy, but Robbie Ray, super big one, and used to be one of my favorite pitchers in the league when he was bad. I've talked about this on the show because I thought he was hilarious. It was strikeout, awesome strikeout, walk, or home run. Like, it was just one of the most entertaining guys. It was incredible and low-key crazy that the D-backs traded him and he immediately became a Cy Young guy out of nowhere, seemingly.
So hurtful.
It's just insane. With the Giants, I do want to give a shout out to Jung Ho Lee. This is an obvious one for people who follow baseball tightly like we do, but basically didn't play. So if you want to be a little bit of a schemer, Michael Bauman made this point on Friday on my show, but like they basically added Willie Adames and Jung Ho Lee this offseason, right? Because Jung Ho Lee did not really play a lot last season. Another year acclimated to the big leagues, that could be a big player for them for sure. In terms of around the division, though, I want to give a little bit of a shout out, of course, as always, without fail, to my guy Michael Conforto. I have to do it.
Yep. You do.
Everyone's been mocking me for years. They've been saying, Javi, you're a moron. He was terrible with the Giants. He had a bad, injury and whatnot. And you know what's going to happen? The Dodgers know what they're doing, man. And the fact that they got this guy on a 1-year deal, them signing him makes me confident. They see, right? I'm not the only one who had their third eye opened. It was also the Dodgers. I
Andrew
think
Friedman.
Conforto's hitting like 26 home runs this year. I think he's going to have a 340 on base. I think he's going to be a really solid player and well worth that value and will get paid this offseason. I think the Dodgers know exactly what they're doing. Rockies is hilarious. I just love that team and for a bunch of reasons. I don't think that there's actually like, yeah, we love Paul. Paul's the best. I don't think that there's any like low key player on that team. They don't have too much because, you know, you've got Brenton Doyle and you've got Ezekiel Tovar. I think just watching Ezekiel Tovar could be fun because that dude had a just obscene 28.8 strikeout percent last year with just a 3.3% walk rate. But he did hit 26 home runs and he did play really good defense. So just a fun player to watch. Ryan McMahon as well. But in terms of around the division, Miller, can we talk about some around the National League? Is that what we're doing next?
We can talk about some around the National League, but I did want to just hit real quick before we go around the NL, just talking about our division real quick, because with the Dodgers, one guy I am watching out for because apparently I looked up his name. Some people were saying he has the inside track on the number 5 job, because if he does, that means one of the 6 guys that could win a Cy Young is going to be out. Dustin May, who missed all of last season, looks like he's going to win that number 5 job. And if he does, that means either Ohtani, a Roki, a Yamamoto, or Glasnow, or Snell, unless you're going with a 6-man rotation, which it sounds like they are. Then it means Tony Gonsolin is on the bench and not starting. Like, that's how deep the Dodgers are. And if Dustin May is pitching that well this spring training, where it feels like he's going to win a rotation spot over one of those other guys, that lets you know where Dustin May is at this point of his career. And then with the Rockies, the one guy, because he was so good as a rookie and then disappointed in a big way last year, Nolan Jones. The Rockies need core pieces to build around. They need like talent that they could feel good about for their future. Nolan Jones put together a rookie season where I crossed over with Paul. He's like, look at the stats. Corbin Carroll versus Nolan Jones. It's a real race for Rookie of the Year. Had a bad season last year, but if he bounces back with a little Brent Doyle and a little Tovar, okay, now you at least have something to be excited about going forward if you're a Rockies fan. So just wanted to say that. But who around the NL are you intrigued by, Javi?
Great call on Nolan Jones, by the way, because he had a huge fallback last year, and I'm just like, Rockies are so easy to root for. It's just them getting good players. Around the NL though, also great call by Dustin May. One of those guys that I feel like everyone is kind of forgotten about. Like genuinely, like this guy has been very good almost all the time he's been healthy, almost, right? Like, and I think at some point it's going to come through, and he's still young enough for it to happen, even if his whole look is a little bit odd, dare I say.
It's kind of one of those guys where like every year, like he's going to break out this season. He's going to break out this season, kind of like the Pavetta. And we're just awaiting. A lot of it has been due to injury, but we're just awaiting this year could be the year.
I want to give a shout out to Jordan Walker of the Cardinals.
Okay.
And then I want to give a shout out to Lars Nootbaar. First of all, Jordan Walker, first of all, Lars Nootbaar, everybody knows that he's a solid, really good player. I only want to give a shout out because I think that Cardinals team is going to be bad. And I'm just curious if maybe his name starts popping up in trade rumors. And they're like, yeah, we know we have control over it, but maybe some prospects, maybe some guys want to trade some big players for this guy. Just a name to keep an eye on. But Jordan Walker, one of the more horribly, like the Cardinals are not good right now, everybody. I don't mean just on the field. I mean like as an organization. This guy had a 116 WRC plus as a 21-year-old in 2023. He was horrific defensively. That was a problem. And then they gave him in 2024, gave him 50 games. And he struggled, and then they sent him down. Actually, they sent him down before the 50 games. They brought him back up later. And I was like, what are you doing? Way to kill this kid's confidence. I'm rooting for him. I think there's a reason he's been up there in like prospect rankings at points. I just think he's a solid player. I think he's really young, and him debuting that early meant a lot. I think the Cardinals are stupid. Do not let them demoting Jordan Walker make you think, oh, wow, this is a Marco Luciano type prospect. No, this is because the friggin' Cardinals don't know what they're doing, right? Just ignore the franchise name. Guys, they haven't known low-key what they've been doing for a long time now. The Cubs, Pete Crow Armstrong, you know what I mean? That's an obvious one. Obviously, he's like the big breakout candidate. He was still really good last year, swiped a ton of bags. I'm just curious to see how that all kind of fixes together. I think Jamison Tyone and Matthew Boyd, like, not exactly the most thrilling arms in that rotation, but nonetheless, I think that they can have at least okay starting pitching depth. they're just kind of the fun, interesting team to watch. And then lastly, I want to give a shout out to my guy, Matt McClain of the Cincinnati Reds. Low key could be the best second baseman in the National League by the end of this year. He was outrageously good in the 89 games he played in 23. 127 WRC plus, 16 home runs in 89 games. This guy's good. And granted, it was only 6 games last year. Or I'm sorry, not 6 games. He didn't play last year, but that's my thing, is that's why everyone forgot about him. They low key could have like a really fun middle infield with Matt McClain and Ellie De La Cruz. And Spencer Steer is at least a guy who can theoretically do things and play, maybe, right? Like, I think that the Reds are just a little frisky, I think, this year. I think they've at least got some stuff, and it's not just an Ellie De La Cruz team, right? Like, they've got some other stuff in there. Their rotation with Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. I think Lodolo is another one to keep an eye on. Andrew Abbott is okay. Right? He's kind of like your old classic ground ball pitcher. Like, it kind of feels like he belongs from a different era, but even still. And then also Brady Singer, I think, could also be good. He's looked great in spring training so far. Reds, sneaky fun team. And basically none of those guys are household names with the exception of Ellie De La Cruz. And I think that changes this year. But otherwise, yeah, man, that's kind of it. I feel like all the other players, I mean, you ever heard of Paul Skeens? Yeah, I've heard of him. Whatever. I don't care. I'm excited for him to eventually be a Yankee in like 4 years. I'm not even trying to be mean to the Pirates fans. It's just your owner doesn't spend, right? Like, that's just what's going to happen. Really excited for everything NL this year, dude. I think that it's clearly the better conference. I think all the better teams are there. I think that you could argue 6 of the 8 best playoff teams last year were National League teams. I think the Yankees could regress. Red Sox are fun, sure. But I'm like, I think the Tigers are like an okay team. I think it's also because that division's pretty weak. Guardians got worse. Astros probably got worse. Mariners don't care. Like, they don't care, I should say. It's all about the National League, man. It's going to be a slugfest in our division. And I think there's just a lot of fun potential stars that could develop this year that people really aren't talking about. I do not think this is going to be chalk whatsoever in terms of who we should expect to be good, with the exception of the Dodgers. Everyone on the Dodgers is going to be great, but otherwise we'll see.
Maybe we need to do that as a podcast topic. Why isn't the American League spending money like the National League? Because, like, you just look at it and it's like, outside like the Red Sox this offseason and like the Yankees, like it feels like the whole AL kind of just sat out free agency. Honestly, just like quick look at the standings. I'm like, who of these teams picked up anybody of note? Like the Orioles, like Corbin Burns go. The Rays never do anything. The Blue Jays only rumored and everything. Like outside like the Rangers, Yankees, and Red Sox, I feel like every other team in the American League does. And I say the Astros too, because they did get Christian Walker. But I'll say like that's 4 teams in the AL who I feel like actually participate in free agency. And then everyone else is a bystander. Meanwhile, the NL, you got teams being active over here. So maybe that needs to be a podcast topic for the other day, because growing up, it felt like the American League dominated the NL in terms of like the talent on the teams, in terms of the overall contenders in each conference. I definitely felt strong about the AL, but there's definitely been a shift in power in Major League Baseball. Excited for spring training to end and for the regular season to start, but we still got a few more weeks before that. So we had to discuss some intriguing players to watch out for the 2025 season. Javi, where can the listeners find you online?
You can check me out at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, on Twitter/X and Blue Sky. Go check out Just Baseball. And by the time everybody's watching this, my other podcast, Baseball versus the World, is back. If you just want fun, silly baseball topics, follow it on the Twitter account. Subscribe on YouTube. We're going to start posting more about that. I'm going to start doing some clips. You know what I mean? I haven't done that many clips in a while, and maybe even Millard will be on one day. So look forward to that.
Hey,
otherwise, yeah, absolutely, man. Otherwise, just what can I say? Letting the good times roll out here until they finally literally roll.
Yeah, gonna have to check out the StreamYard AI feature. Haven't heard good reviews yet, but maybe we'll do a couple of breakout rooms, a couple of those post-game shows via the AI cut up tool. So we'll check that out. I mean, I guess the listeners, you don't even know what we're talking about. This is really just inside baseball stuff. But if you guys ever see a YouTube show in the future, just know AI might have made that. I might know how to cut that up myself. For the Locked On listeners of the Dbacks, or if you're just a Padres listener that want to follow along, please check me out at Creator Thomas 24 on Twitter. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram, for the podcast handle. And please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On Padres on YouTube, and wherever you stream your podcast. Javi, until next time, until another crossover, enjoy spring training, sir. Dose.